Okay. Welcome to Lifespan. And it's going to be a fun semester. It's one of my favorite classes. And I learned a long time ago that because of this class, the material in this class is like vast, right? We could spend probably a whole year talking about lifespan development. We're going to spend 10 weeks. So I try to cut to the chase with these classes and talk about some specific things or specific areas of lifespan and allow you guys to kind of read the material in between times is kind of the idea here. And so I also realize that some of the topics that we're going to talk about are super interesting to pretty much everybody. And then some topics we talk about might not be as interesting to some people. But I'm going to probably always default towards talking about lifespan development as you would if you're a counselor or a therapist, because that's pretty much what everyone here is trying to kind of get into. And so I'm going to do my best to also show you how I would use this information in my sessions with my clients and just kind of help you start thinking about those things. Because one of the classes that really did impact me a lot in my master's program was a lifespan development class. I had a really good professor, and the information that I learned there, I still use today. I'm not going to lie that this book is thick and has a ton of information. It's also a new edition. I've got my book in my office notebook. I don't know if everybody can see that. My daughter got this for me. So I've got the loose leaf version. But it's a new version. There's been a few changes from the old version, but if you have the old version, that's fine. You should be fine. What's happened is they've just updated some of the statistics and a lot of the new research, especially in the area of all the neuroscience, that's changing so rapidly. They're trying to stay ahead of that. And so I'm reading this book for the first time with you guys. So I'll be reading it through just like you guys are. So just know that it's a lot of information, and I'll do my best to try to point out the things that are hopefully the most important. Okay. Let me spend about, I don't know, a few minutes here talking about assignments and expectations, if we can. And then after that, I'm going to start asking questions. And anybody here that wants to answer is more than welcome to. I don't make people do it. Now, if we were in a class face to face, I'd be asking everybody to answer some of these questions, but I don't usually do that on a Zoom call because it sometimes get awkward because everybody starts talking at the same time and makes it a little bit weird. So let's first talk about the assignments and kind of go from there. I want to talk first about the one that's coming up first, and those are the exercises. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen here. Just one second. There's a new feature here. Zoom will let you do now, which is kind of cool. So everyone in your book, you should have these sections that look like this. It's called Review, Connect, and Reflect. They're all throughout the book. They're everywhere. Every chapter has 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Depends on the material. I believe this one is from the first chapter. Yeah, I think it's from the first chapter. I think I just grabbed a screenshot of one. So the exercises, I wanted to do something besides like give you a quiz that would help you kind of with the reading to start synthesizing some of the reading. But I also wanted to do something that would help you start to think more specifically about, different developmental stages, right? So in general, we're going to be talking about infancy or early childhood, middle childhood, late childhood. And then we're going to talk about early and middle adolescence, late adolescence, and then we're going to talk about adulthood. And adulthood could be broken up into early adulthood, middle, and late as well. And the book basically follows that path. The book also goes through and looks at and kind of organizes things in different developmental areas like cognitive development, socio-emotional development, physical development. So every chapter will have aspects of each of those inside the chapter. And that's kind of how we'll talk about it in class as well. So one thing that I wanted you guys to be able to do is take these sections, these review, connect, reflect sections, okay, from the book. And literally all you'll do is you'll see in the review here, there's 3 questions, right? You'll answer them. You'll go to the connect part. You'll answer whatever that is. Usually that's a connect to your life kind of thing. And then there's a reflection piece. It's usually a question or ask you to make a comment on something. Okay. You're going to do 2 of these for each assignment. Okay. Now here's where people get confused, and I'm going to do my best to make it clear. If you want to do these review, connect, reflect as you read, like I'm going to start in chapter 1 and I'm going to read chapter 1. And the first one of these I come to, I'm going to do as my assignment. And then the second one I come to, I'm going to do as my assignment. That's fine. You can do that. It doesn't matter to me how you do it. In the past, I've had students that really wanted to focus on a specific developmental lifespan, like adolescence or childhood or adulthood. And sometimes they skip to those chapters and do these review, connect, reflect sections from those chapters. That's fine too. As long as you do 2 for each assignment. Okay. Once you do those 2 on your, that's what you'll write up, right? So you'll call it review, connect, reflect 1, number 1. Answer the questions. And then you'll say review, connect, reflect number 2. And then answer those questions. You turn that into me. You turn it in via Moodle. Okay, you just upload it as a Word file. And that's what I grade. Okay. The second part of this assignment, part B and C, is you're going to post a reflection on a forum on Moodle. You'll see it on Moodle. And you have a week between when you turn in the first part to me and when you post your reflection. Okay. And the reflection is 1 or 2 paragraphs of what you, of the developmental stage that you picked and why you picked it. Some of the forum discussions, I've got some specific questions for you to answer in them. Other ones I don't. Okay. But you're just going to reflect on whatever that life stage you chose and what you learned and why you chose it. Okay. And then you're going to comment on a couple of other students' posts as well as you go through. And I look at those too. I don't comment on all of them, but I do read all of them. Every once in a while, I'll throw in a comment. And I've been known to throw in comments that are like devil's advocate and make people get all rust up. And we kind of have discussions because that's the only way we can kind of have discussions because we're not face to face, right? And you have a week to do part B and C. Okay. So you start with 2 of these sections, review, connect, reflect number 1 and number 2. You turn that into me. Okay. These are in the chapter. They're all throughout the book. Second and third part is the forum discussion. You will put your reflection up there on the forum, and then you make comments on other people's forums. Sometimes comments are questions too. Hey, I noticed you said XYZ thing. Could you talk more about that? Or tell me what you mean? Or I thought this. The forum is really how we connect with each other, right? That's how we talk with each other. I would say it's like Facebook, but it's not. It's a lot nicer. It's not like Facebook. Does that make sense? Okay. Now,
I have a question.
Absolutely.
The second part of the assignment, like this different stage which you did mention that we need to choose whichever we prefer,
Yep.
is that going to be like an independent aspect from the review, connect, reflect?
I think it should be the same. Otherwise, you're doing double work. Right. So I would just reflect off of one of these that you choose.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
not
So,
quite.
okay. So when you get done with this assignment, you're going to turn in 2 of these sections to me, right?
Correct.
You can just choose one of them to reflect on if you want.
Okay.
I usually tell people to reflect on whatever the life stage that you've chosen. That's usually a little bit easier.
All right.
Does that help? Hopefully.
Yes.
Keep in mind that as we go through, I'm going to give you guys feedback on these assignments as well. Like I'll give you pretty direct feedback. Hey, you did this great, but do this next time kind of thing.
Okay.
Right? I'll give you feedback on it so that everyone knows. I'm going to stop sharing. Hang on a second. I want to see everybody. I only get to see like 3 people when I share.
I'm sorry, my lighting is not bad.
So when I give you feedback, I do know that some people like really good feedback, like tell me what I did wrong feedback.
Mhm.
Some people like tell me what I did right feedback. Okay. I never know at the beginning of the semester who wants what. So this semester, what I'm doing is I'm going to ask you if you feel comfortable enough to just email me or send me a note. Hey, I like to know what I did wrong kind of feedback, or I like to know what I did right kind of feedback. If you guys wouldn't mind doing that, that would really help me a lot. Here's why I'm saying that. I am here's what you did right person. And professor, therapist, parent, husband, person. That's just my personality. However, I can tell you what you did wrong if you would like for me to. I've gotten kind of good at that. That's kind of what the PhD does to you. It makes you critical and makes you be able to tell people criticism and give them critical feedback. Not criticism as in like you're so bad, but critical feedback. I can do that too. But if you'll just let me know, that way I can give you what is most helpful to you. Here's the catch with that. I also realize that some people that like that certain type of feedback also don't want to speak up and be heard, which is kind of a catch-22. That's why I'm saying if you want to just send me a note, hey, I'd love X kind of feedback. That'd be great. Don't put it in the chat tonight because I'm going to forget. Send me an email, send me a text. Just let me know, and I'll be able to do that for you. Okay. All right.
I got one question. So
only one. You can't ask more than one question. That's
okay,
it.
well, I take that back. I have question potential more. So for the part A assignment, you said we're doing 2 of the review, quite a little blurbs. Now, the grade and rubric for that, or the requirements, is 2 to 3 pages.
Total.
Oh, so for both.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh
okay.
God, please don't give me 6 or 7 pages, y'all.
Okay.
I'll never get them graded. I have 100 students this semester. So that sounds like I'm whining. I don't mean that bad. I probably shouldn't say that. I want to be able to grade y'all's work. And honestly, these sections, you shouldn't have to write. I mean, they're not like they're not like reports or research papers. They are more essays. So they're more like short answer.
Okay.
You should be able to. Honestly, what people write the most on are usually the reflection part.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah. 2 to 3 pages total is fine for both those. If you write more, that's fine. But 2 to 3 pages is fine. I'm a real, like, if you can say it in 2 words, don't use 10 person. I think that's cool. I like that. But I also realize that some people need 10 words to say 2. That's fine too. I have a lot of colleagues like that. My daughter's like that. She likes to talk a lot. I'm like, babe, you could have told me that in like this little sentence, and she gave me this paragraph. But you know, that's how it goes. That's how you do things. I'm making a joke. I'm really sarcastic. So y'all gonna find out really quickly.
I have a
I see.
question.
Yes, go for it.
For these 2 to 3 pages, we are talking like double spaced APA-ish format, but not
Yep.
exactly APA format because it's questions and we're just answering the questions
Yep.
based on what we read in the book. Is
That's
that
right.
correct?
And the reason why a lot of it's not like you don't need to cite anything because I know where you got the information, right?
Okay.
So you don't need to cite it. The APA piece that is important is actually writing well, right? Like write clear with clarity, your grammar. Please, y'all, use your grammar. It's really important. We're master's level graduate students. Let's use our grammar. And if you would like help with grammar, I can do that too. I was not really awesome with grammar until I went back to my master's program and then my PhD, and then you write a dissertation and you get really good at it. The only reason why I'm bringing that up is because our world is changing into a really kind of written word world. We have to be able to write things and be coherent. And so I'm gonna really kind of push you guys to be clear with your words, with what you're writing. Okay. All right. Any other questions? These are great questions.
I just want to
Yeah.
confirm something. So you're saying that the 2 to 3 pages is going to include our reflection, and then the reflection portion is all we post in the next week?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And that reflection post can be like a paragraph, 3 or 4 or 5 sentences. You know, you don't, some people post more, but you don't have to post, a ton in there. It's mainly, those are just kind of discussion starters more than anything that you're posting.
Dr. Beddard, I got a quick question.
Yeah.
I noticed, I think you said the dates on the syllabus were a little wrong, and I noticed Moodle says March 20th. That's supposed to be September, right? September 20th, September.
So, okay. So I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Okay,
I'm about to go over all the dates next. And I got this paper right off Moodle. So I've actually emailed Anna at Amberton and be like, hey, I got students telling me I've got the wrong syllabus and I've got wrong dates. I'm not exactly sure where it's coming from, but I'm going to go over all that tonight and clarify all of it. I do know that the syllabus title has been changed. I think I don't put the titles of anything on Moodle with the syllabi. It just gets posted. And I think they just had the wrong dates for the syllabi on there, but I'm gonna go through all that. I'm gonna go through all the dates and everything
Okay.
for you guys.
and are
Okay?
they typically Mondays? Is that typically when assignments are due?
The assignments are either going to be due Friday or Saturday every week.
Okay.
I think the paper itself, I think, is due on a Sunday this year, I believe.
It's next Saturday or Sunday that you did.
Yeah, I think it's Saturday. Is it the 20? I can't remember the dates. I'm going to go over that in a second. Do you guys have any other questions about this particular assignment other than the dates?
I guess, hi, how are you? How is everyone doing? I just had a question. Did you want us to break down in the essay, like review, connect, reflect? Like, do you want the questions in the essay? Just
You don't need it. You can do the questions if you want. I just need to know that this is number 1 that you're doing and number 2 that you're doing.
Okay.
That's what's most important to me. To be quite honest with you, what I would do is say review, reflect, connect number 1. Do a review section, connect section, reflect section. That's what I would do
Okay.
to keep
Okay.
it. I mean, that's the best way to do it. That way I know you've done 2, number 1. Number 2, I can look at those sections. You don't have to write the questions. If you want to, that's fine.
Okay.
Either way is fine.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions? Not that we can't go back, but I'm just asking. Okay, let's talk about something else. Let's talk about Let me get my Word documents up here. Y'all don't need that. Y'all aren't doing that. Got that one done. Let me talk about the due dates real quick, since we brought that up. Okay. So here's the first one. Sorry, guys. I just like to see everybody. So I'll try to put everybody up on screen here. So this is the due dates that's on Moodle. So Jerry, this is why I was confused about where people were getting March and things like that. I was assuming it was from the syllabus. But I looked on the syllabus and there weren't March dates on that either. So I'm not exactly sure where those things were coming from. I do know this date right here is wrong. I need to change that in this one. But right here on the due dates right here, this is when everything is due. So for example, exercise 1 part A is due on the 18th, which is a Saturday, this Saturday, which means that your forum discussion is due 1 week after that. So it'll be the 25th. Right. And so you'll see that the first 2 exercises will be September 18th, September 25th, and then October 2nd and 9th, which is basically back-to-back weeks that you'll have those due. And then the midterm will actually be October 15th. I'm going to change this. Change this one too. I'll update this on there. So, and I'm going to talk specifically about the midterm here in a second, but the midterm and the final both are online exams, and they open on a Friday, which is the 15th, and they close on a Wednesday, which is the 20th. So you basically have all those days to complete it. It's kind of like a take home, but it's not kind of like, it's a take home exam. Basically, okay. Each exam is 75 questions, multiple choice. Use your notes, use your book, use your brain. Okay. And then let me talk specifically about the study guides. So I've got a couple of things here. So the midterm study guide and the final study guide, hopefully everyone can see those two things. There are more questions on the study guide than there are actual exam questions on purpose. And here's the reason why. If you do the study guide, which I would suggest you start when you start reading, if you do the study guide, you will probably make 100 on the exam. The study guide and the exam look suspiciously similar, like pretty much the exact same thing. Okay. I noticed at least 1 or 2 people that have had me in class before, and they can attest to what I'm saying. This is, I don't try to trick people or anything. I'm not going to lie and say that the study guide's real easy, because some of the questions are difficult. They're going to make you think on purpose, but they're made to go along with the reading. Instead of me trying to know if you're reading or not, I know you read, because if you do the study guide, you do well on the exam, pretty much. Okay, and that's true for both the midterm and the final. The other thing that I started doing about 3 semesters ago is I've got this midterm study guide forum right here. And I'm going to do one for the final study guide forum. I'll do a final study guide forum as well. That is for anytime you're going through the midterm or the final study guide, and you're like, oh man, that question doesn't make sense. You can go on here and you can post, hey, question number 112 in chapter 15. What'd you guys, I got this. What'd you guys think? Kind of thing. Okay. Which is normally what we would actually do in class. Like in class, I would have students that would come early and bring their study guides with them, and they would kind of go through it together or study together and that kind of thing. That's basically what that's for. So you guys could have some way to talk to each other about the study guide. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Okay. So if you do the study guide, you'll do great on the exam. When you go to the exam, you'll see it right here. I've already got the link here. It's not open yet, so you can't take it. It only opens on the 15th. When you go to the exam, you'll go to this link. It'll take you to the website. Okay. Sorry, my dog's barking. There must have been a gust of wind or something that makes him bark. So it's called Class Marker. You'll go to the exam. It'll take you right to the exam. You'll put your name, your email address, and you'll make a password up, and that's how you get in and out of the exam. Okay. If for any reason you want to stop the exam, like say you start on Friday and you're like, I just want to answer 5 questions today, you can stop it and log out. It'll stop your time. It'll hold your place. And when you log back in, you'll pick up right where you left off. And you technically have 4 hours to finish it, but you can spread that 4 hours out over those 3 or 4 days, 5 days. Okay. I put this in bold for a reason, because when you finish your exam, okay, the exam grade does not get posted to Moodle. I do that manually because the exam and Moodle are not connected. I will get an email of your grade, but I can also go on here and look at your grade. I can click results and see it, right? And then I will record your grade into the grade book. I typically wait about a week or so to record the grades, because sometimes I give points. Like if there's a question that everyone gets wrong, I'm like, well, that's a bad question. I throw it out and I give you the point for that. Why am I bringing this up? Inevitably, someone will email me and say, hey, I don't see my grade right after they took the test, and they'll show me a screenshot of their test. And just so I know, just rest assured that if you finish the exam, I get an email and I can see your results. So you will totally get those points on the grade book. Okay. So just so you know, that's kind of how that works. All right. Any question about the exam?
I have a question.
Yeah.
We don't need to like register ahead of time to take the exam, right? We can like do
no.
it that day. Okay.
That day. Nah, you just jump on there and go.
Perfect.
Everything's online. Mhm.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the paper.
How many questions are we expecting at the exam? Did you say 75?
75.
Okay.
Yep. You want more? I can give you more. We can do, how about 100? Let's do 100. Nobody ever wants, I say that every time, nobody ever wants to do more. Okay, let's talk about the paper. So this paper is a little bit of a hybrid between a research paper and a reflection paper. Now, why would I do that? There's 2 reasons. One, I do want you to do a research type of project, type of paper, but I also want you to begin to synthesize what you're learning and reflect on that, because literally as a counselor, you're synthesizing and reflecting all the time with your clients, away from your clients. It's just something that you start doing, and I want you to start doing it And I do it in all my classes are heavy reflection. Okay. So let's talk about the research part first. That's 80 points total. What I want you to do is pick out a life stage. Okay. Infancy, early childhood, middle adolescence, late adulthood. It doesn't matter to me. Pick out a life stage. Most typically people pick out ones that they want to know more about or they don't know as much about. But sometimes people pick stages that they know a lot about, but they just kind of want to study more about. It doesn't matter to me which one you pick. Okay. You're going to give super basic information on the cognitive, social, emotional, physical, biological aspects of that life stage. Okay. You're going to give that information. You're going to talk about what you learned about that stage in each of those aspects. Okay. Then the third part is you're going to pick either a disorder or a common issue that happens in that life stage. And this is where you do a lot more specific research. Okay. You're going to describe the effects on that stage. For example, I've had a lot of students that do late adulthood and talk about Alzheimer's, which is fine. That's just an example. Alzheimer's, the impact on adults, eating disorders, impact on adolescents, depression. You could talk about anxiety. I mean, there's lots of different ones. I've had students that have done their whole research reflection paper on corporal punishment, on the effects of divorce. I mean, you could do any topic is fine. Okay. What makes this a research project is that you need to have, besides the book, you can use the book as one source. That's fine. You need to have 3 additional sources outside the book. My suggestion is always looking at journal articles. So 3 journal articles, 4 journal articles, however many, Sometimes I've had students that have used actual books as well, which is fine. But you need to have 3 separate resources outside the text for this research. Most of that will come within this kind of disorder issue discussion. That's typically where you're going to find a lot of it. The second place that you're going to use that is what kind of treatment options are available for whatever that issue or disorder that you're talking about. For example, if we're talking about eating disorders in adolescence, what are the current treatment options available for adolescents with eating disorders? If we're talking about ADHD, what are the current treatment options for either a student, or I work with adults now with ADHD. I mean, the ADHD is not something that just happens in childhood. It happens over the lifespan of someone's life, but you're going to be specific to a life stage, but what treatment options are available for whatever that issue is. And I say disorder or issue on purpose because having parents that are divorced is not a disorder, right? That's an issue. But if you're a counselor and you work with kids, adolescents, or adults, guess what? You're going to work with divorce in some way. So knowing something about it will be helpful. We could do the same thing with any kind of addiction or abuse, like drug abuse, alcohol abuse, that kind of thing. What I would suggest is you guys start thinking about either a disorder or an issue that you think you might be interested in learning more about, and just start looking for the information about that. That's what I would do. Does that make sense, hopefully, with everybody?
Yes.
Okay. So those first 4 areas are the all research part. Okay. APA, citations, clarity, grammar, everything, right? Okay. The second part of this paper is a reflection section, and you're just going to simply answer these 4 questions right here. Okay. Why'd you pick this? Is it personal to you? Is it just an area of interest? What are some things you learned? did your opinion change about it? In other words, did you have a certain opinion about this and then it changed? Or did it stay the same? And I'm actually more, I believe this more now than I did before. And then what further study would you like to pursue? If you could, if you say, hey, you know what, I'd like to learn more about this. What would you like to learn more about? This section right here is really where you can kind of let loose and say, hey, here's what I think. Here's what I figured out. Here's what I learned. This was interesting to me. This was kind of dumb to me. This is what I liked. This is what I didn't like. This is all kind of reflection from you. Okay, that's 15 points. The other 5 points are from the references and correct citations in APA. Okay. Now, let me take a step back. Any question about this particular assignment? Who's going to ask about how many pages we need to write?
Me.
Yeah.
Me.
So the rule of thumb for graduate school typically is 1 page per source. That's the typical rule. So we have the book as a source and 3 others. That's 4 sources. Technically, that would be 4 pages. If you get to 6 pages, you've gone too far. I could be like one of my professors in my PhD program. He used to tell us, like, if he'd give us he'd say, look, this is a 5-page paper, let's say. And he would say, I'm only going to read the 5 pages. If you give me 10 pages, I stop at page 5. I'm not going to do that. But I had a professor who did that. The reason is because I also want you guys to start learning how to combine information and synthesize information. I can always tell that if you didn't really do that, because it just is like word vomit and you didn't edit it and you just turned it in. But on the flip side of that, if I'm being honest, I also realize that some of y'all's personality and learning style is that you need that last minute, like that procrastinate. I need to write this at 3 a.m. and that adrenaline helps you finish. I know that there are people like that too. And that's okay. And then there's other people that are like, no, I got to get this done 2 weeks before it's due. That's fine too. I don't care how you do it. It doesn't matter to me. Just do it well. That's all. I offer every semester. If you guys want me to read this first and give comments about it before you actually turn it in, I will do that. But I do need it a couple of weeks before it's due. If you need feedback. Or if you want me to give you feedback or help you think through, like, I can't figure out what life stage or what topic. If you need help with that, I can help you with that too. Okay, so 4 to 6 pages is fine. That would be fine. Anything past 6, I think, would be a lot. 4 to 6, I think, would cover it. Any other questions about this particular assignment? I'm the greatest communicator that's ever communicated. There's no more questions. It can't be possible. There's no
I'll
way.
ask a question.
Oh, I have okay.
Yeah, I have one too.
Is this document here is posted on
Yes.
Moodle?
That's
Okay.
right. Mhm.
That was an easy question. I'll come up
Yeah,
with a
but-
harder one later.
Yeah, both of these are on Moodle. Mhm.
Okay.
What percentage point is is this worth for grades? I'm sure you have it. I just can't find it right now.
So this is 100 points. So the exams are 75 apiece. The exercises are 40 apiece. So that's 120,
Okay.
right? So this is 100. The exams are 150. And the reflections are 120. So total points is kind of how I do it.
Okay.
So that's the lowest percentage, right, of all of them. They're all pretty much about the same though, within a few percentage points of each other. I'm probably a little different. You know, it's interesting because about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, this fall, I was teaching in class and I made the paper like 80% of the grade. Oh my gosh, man, people hated that. So I was like, okay, we don't have to do that. So I changed it. So now I kind of make it a little more even. Honestly, I didn't know, I wasn't really aware of all the learning styles until I started working at Amberton. And as we've gone along and I've tried to learn more about learning styles and my teaching style, I try to do assignments and teach to all the learning styles as much as I can. So that's why some of the assignments are a little different than others. That doesn't have anything to do with what you just asked, but that's just more information.
No, but it's appreciated.
And I
All
have a
right.
question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
But I'm going back to the review, connect, reflect really quickly.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so within the connect, reflect, we're
Yep.
going to do 2 of the reviews.
You're
And
gonna do
with
2 of those full sections.
The full section. Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure. So one
Yeah.
on this page and one on whatever other.
That's right. You
Yeah,
got
okay.
it. That's it.
I just wanted
That's it.
clarity. Thank you.
You got it. You got it.
Basically 6 total, since you have 3 exercises here and we need
That's
to
right.
do 2 boxes for each exercise.
That's
so
right.
6 total.
Different boxes each time too. I had a student try to sneak one in on me one time. Yeah, they have to be different. That's right.
Amateur.
That's right, man. You got to get up early to fool me. I'm sure someone's fooled me somewhere. Yeah, you'll do 6 total. 2 each assignment. Yep. I think it helps the reading too. It just makes the reading a little better when you're reading through. I actually like this textbook a lot. They do a really good job. This is a ton of information. They do a really good job of giving you what you need and explaining it. I think they do a good job. It's a good textbook.
I'll ask another question. Do you have, are you going to provide maybe some recommended resources, recommended journals for our research?
I can.
That would be helpful.
So when we think about journals, when we think about research, number one, we're always thinking peer reviewed, right? So we're thinking the major journals that you would find on EBSCO or JSOD or through the library are all peer reviewed, right? You're not gonna, oh my gosh. Please, please, please. I gotta stop sharing. Please do not quote Wikipedia on your paper or Google or some, I don't know, Yahoo, something. Please don't do that. Those are not peer-reviewed anything. I want journals. If you're going to use something from the internet, now you can find journals, electronic articles, that's fine. That's great. But from a peer-reviewed journal, anything you'd find on EBSCO through the Amberton's library, when you do research through them, right? Those are all peer-reviewed journals. Okay. The reason why I bring that up is I've had students in the past that have quoted Wikipedia. Wikipedia is not a legitimate area to get researched information. Is that weird? Does that sound weird?
No, not at all.
Okay. It's just, that's not, yeah, just don't do that, please. Okay. Any other questions about the research paper? All right, let's move on. Let's see. Let me share my screen one more time here. Okay. I've tried to go ahead and say the days and times that we're going to meet for class. It's roughly every other week. It's going to be 4 times during the semester. I've also given the topics that we're going to talk about. I said this was going to be a 1-hour class, but it's probably going to be a little bit more than that tonight. Typically, they will be an hour and a half. So our next class will be on October 4th, and I'm going to talk about emotions across the lifespan. In other words, so these particular classes are going to focus in on specific areas or specific issues or specific things that are clinically relevant to us. Okay. In other words, I'm not just going to go through my PowerPoints and read PowerPoints and stuff like that. We're going to talk. I will have some slides, but it's all for discussion and I'll probably do a little bit of lecture, a little bit of discussion, that kind of thing. So then the next one, we'll talk about childhood through adolescence. And then the last class will be focused on adulthood. And even inside those last two classes, we'll be focusing on, like, for example, we're going to talk about parenting and childhood, parenting and adolescence specifically. In adulthood, we're going to talk about marriages. And then we're also going to talk about different, individual types of issues that might come up inside those, like addiction or other mental health disorders type thing. Okay. I try to unpack several things at once, and these will be recorded, and I'll have some slides, but not a ton of slides on these. I've also put some videos, and I'll probably put some more out on Moodle to look at. Like I've got one on the teen brain that's fairly recent. That's really good. Adolescent brain. There's a couple of other videos I've been looking at recently I might put up that I think are good. Get rid of that. Okay. All right. Any questions about anything I've been talking about so far before I move on to the next thing?
Quick question, Dr. Bedard. I thought I understood the simple the exercises, the review, connect, reflect. I think I was comparing them to the chapters. How there's 10 sections, 10 chapters, I guess. Those 3 exercises, they don't really align with the chapters. Can they be any? I mean, it can be all from one chat. I mean, that wouldn't make sense. So they can be from any chapters, right? Any sections. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I was trying to align with the chapters as we went. And I was like, oh, that doesn't make sense. So thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, it can be from anywhere. If you say I want to do them, all of them from chapter 1, chapter 5, and chapter 7, you could do that. You can do it however you want.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions about anything? Not anything related to the assignments. Elizabeth, you're muted.
All right. I'm sorry about that.
That's no problem.
Sorry about that. I didn't notice it. Yes, I was saying, I wasn't sure if you are still to get into the developmental theory study guide. I wanted to ask a question in that section of the course syllabus.
Which part?
Developmental theories study guide.
Oh, the theories. Okay. Those things on Moodle. Let me go back over here. Hang on a second. I'm glad you asked that. Thanks for bringing that up. Hang on a second. Let me share my screen one more time. Okay. Come on. Okay. I have put in here, right here, and right here. These are just information for you. There's no like anything that's due or you're doing or anything.
Okay.
Basically, I've tried to give you synopsis of developmental periods, different ones. Same thing with the theories, because they're all in the book, right?
Yes.
And the other reason why I've done this is for you as you move forward in your coursework and then you get ready to take your exam, this will come in handy for you,
Okay.
these things. So there's no real assignment associated with these. It's just information for you.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I meant to think, I'm glad you brought that up. I meant to point that out and I forgot. So these two things you can just, they're just, if you want to read them, you can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Either way is fine.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other questions?
So for the research section paper,
Mhm.
when we talk of life stages, can it be like from conception,
So
or we look
here-
from infancy?
So
or-
stages of development, right? So if we look at how the stages operate, okay?
Mhm.
Basically, you do have like, let's say from birth until late elementary is a stage, right?
That's right. Mhm.
Okay, that's childhood. Then you have adolescence. And now each one of these stages can be broken down into smaller stages too. We could say early childhood. We could say late childhood. We could do the same thing in adolescence. We could say early adolescence, technically middle adolescence and late adolescence. We can do that. We can do the same thing in adulthood, early adulthood, which used to be called young adults, which used to be called emerging adults. Now it's called young adults again, middle adulthood, late adulthood, right? So each one of those is a stage. I would suggest that the more you get as specific as you can on those stages. In other words, if you, and I'm making all this up like as an example, if you say, I want to talk about ADHD, for example, I'm going to talk about ADHD in early adolescence or, from 12 to 16-year-old boys or girls or whatever. That's what I would say. Just kind of try to get specific if you can. At ADHD would be an easy one because there's a ton of information about ADHD. There's a lot of research about it. Versus if you say, well, I'm talking about Alzheimer's or dementia. That's really a late adulthood stage issue, right? Or disorder that we're talking about. So that would kind of narrow you down just because of your topic or your issue. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So well, let me ask this question. How many of you, as we're talking about this, go, I think I'm interested in somewhere in childhood, and I'm probably going to research somewhere in childhood. Who's interested in that? I'm just curious.
Me, because I feel like that my baby have that problem.
Okay.
So that's why
Okay.
I'm into that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Also interested, but not committed at the moment.
Okay. Got it. Who
I'm
else?
also interested in that.
Okay.
I've taught middle school and high school for a long time, so I'm also kind of in that range.
Okay. So who in here would say, no, I'm kind of more in adolescence. I would like to look in that life stage of development.
I guess that'd be me.
I'll look on both. For now, I'm not sure which one to
Okay.
decide upon.
Okay. How many people are saying, no, I kind of want to get into the adulthood side?
I'm interested in that, but not committed.
Okay.
I'm definitely more into the adults.
Okay.
I'm also interested in the adults.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay.
Interested in the young adult.
I love this interested but not committed. That is so fascinating. I really want to ask questions about that. I love it.
That sounds like my dating life.
Oh man, we could
I need more information. That's
Yeah, let's
what
have
it means.
we could have a whole session about that. We could talk about it and get more information about it. That's great. I love it. No, I love that phrase. That's good. That's good. So let me ask it this way. If I turn it a little bit, How many of you are maybe thinking more about an issue or disorder versus a life stage right now?
Yeah, more in the issue and disorder,
Okay.
specifically like CPTSD and ADHD. But I don't know if I want to deal with that in childhood or adults.
Okay. Gotcha.
I'm thinking about it. Thinking about an issue, specifically like attachment disorder.
Those are so good. I want to read your paper.
That's the same
I'm
for
sorry.
me. Is yours, Elizabeth, a issue as a young adult or what age?
I'm sorry.
So
What is your age, Elizabeth, that you're interested in the issue?
I've not yet decided. I'm looking at adolescent and early childhood.
So technically, attachment disorders are childhood disorders, technically, by the DSM. So reactive attachment disorder is an actual childhood disorder that also can have effects into adulthood.
That's what I'm
Right.
thinking.
So in your case, Elizabeth, I would say, like, let's say, so I'm an attachment, you kind of hit something close to home for me because I'm an attachment theorist. So if we look at attachment across the lifespan, you would look at the effects, let's say, of attachment disorder in adulthood. I'm just making this up, but like, in adulthood, attachment disorder impacts adults in this way, or comes out in adolescence in this way. So it's kind of an effects, like it has this effect kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So that, but attachment disorder. So attachment is a theory, one theory about how people connect and live in relationship, and it's connected to parenting, it's connected to our relationships, it's connected to friendships. So it's kind of an overarching theory, but reactive attachment disorder is a very specific type of disorder that happens mainly it's only really diagnosed in childhood, because technically right now it's a childhood disorder.
That's right.
Do you think you're going to lecture on that?
It's such a beautiful, it's such a nice.
We're going to
topic.
talk about attachment for sure.
Okay. It's just really interesting.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about attachment. For sure.
Okay.
I think I've got on the Moodle, I've got a attachment assessment, adult attachment assessment on there you can take. It'll tell you what your attachment style is.
I'll second what Sandra just said, that it's really interesting. So any kind of resources you want to throw out, videos and stuff, I would eat that up.
Definitely.
Can we start like a book forum where we can just randomly like link books that we've found helpful?
Great
Yeah,
idea.
sure.
I love that.
Yeah,
sure.
because I have like 10 books I just want to blurt out right now, but
Yeah, sure.
okay, cool. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, we got time. So here's what attachment is. Can you guys still hear me? I just got this blurb saying my internet's going out. Hopefully you guys can.
We can hear you.
We can hear you. I can hear you.
So here's what attachment is. I'm going to boil down decades of attachment research into 2 minutes. All right. And I'm going to use an example. So now if you'll forgive me, some of this example is like a real American example. Although attachment theory and attachment styles themselves are universal. In other words, they go cross culture, cross ethnicities, cross gender. It's a well vetted theory. It's actually, well, it resonates with me just because of how my brain works. But so attachment theory basically means, you can kind of talk about how we connect. So if you think about, if you're a kid and you're playing chase or tag, right? So you're running, someone's chasing you, you're trying to get to base, right? As soon as you get to base, then you're safe, right? They can tag you, but you'll never be it, right? If we fast forward into adulthood, we don't want to run from or chase those people that we want, that we should have the safest relationship with, right? So for example, in a marriage or any non-marital relationship, we want that relationship to be safe. We want it to be base, right? We don't want to run from it. We don't want to chase it. We want that relationship to be base. Okay. That's basically what attachment theory is talking about. Right? Now, here's the beauty of attachment. If you have an attachment style, let's say, that's anxious, maybe, or anything that's not secure, basically, that doesn't mean that you are forever locked into that attachment style. That attachment style can be changed. There are things that you can do to help that attachment style. Having said that, if you have specific traumas or abuses that have happened in your life, it does make it harder because you've had basically injuries to your attachment early in your life that may or may not have anything to do with the person, your friends, your family. It could just be something that happened. And so when we talk about attachment in this class, which we'll probably talk about the third class, we'll talk about it more specifically. We'll talk about the styles and what that looks like, but we'll also talk specifically about what that looks like in like the context of therapy, like context of working with people, clinically speaking. And at the same time, I also realize that not every person is going to resonate with attachment theory. Some people resonate with other theories. That's fine. Attachment theory is just kind of seen as like a universal theory, basically, that really has roots in lots of different things, especially in relationships. And so that's one of the reasons why we highlight it and talk about it. But it's not the only theory. Obviously, there's lots of other theories. And keeping in mind that theories are just our way of trying to organize thoughts, right? We're trying to organize why people do what they do, why people believe the things they believe, why people act the way they act. They're just theories trying to figure those things out. Attachment theory is no different. That's one of the things that it does. So I'm boiling down decades of information like into a couple minutes, but that's kind of what attachment theory is. So it's a lot about your connection. I actually use attachment theory even with my classes, right? So this place that we're talking about right now, what we're doing right now, is a safe spot. Doesn't mean that we can't disagree or we will always see things the same. It means actually that we can actually see things differently and disagree, but we're still safe. That's what it actually means. It actually means that if I see something differently than Jared, and Jared and I get into a disagreement, a safe, secure attachment says that even if I disagree with Jared, I don't dislike Jared. I just disagree with Jared. Sorry, Jared, I'm picking on you. I don't mean to pick on you, but in other words, I'm not going to venomize someone just because I disagree with them, because we're still a safe spot, right? Does that make sense? That's kind of what secure attachment means. There's not a lot, there's no fear. It's not fear-based or guilt-based or anything like that. Does that make sense? Hopefully, maybe.
Definitely.
Okay. Because we're going to have discussions and we're going to talk about things. And sometimes we're going to talk about things and people are going to go, oh, that's crazy. I don't think that. That's okay. It's no big deal. No big deal.
I have a quick question just to add to what you said. In a situation where a person is in an abused relationship, are you getting me?
Yep, I got you.
Okay, because my internet says disconnect, so I wasn't sure if you. In a situation where an individual is in an abused relationship and they don't see themselves getting out of that relationship, but there is a brokenness in the relationship. So where do we put attachment in that scenario?
Well, in that scenario, you have extreme attachment injuries that have occurred that are not, you're no longer safe. So when we talk about attachment, one of the main safety points we're talking about is emotional safety, right? Physical safety is also obviously very important, just like your mental health, just like your mental safety, right? They all kind of go together. So in situations of abuse, those are obviously not super safe atmospheres. They're not safe environments.
So what keep an individual in a relationship where they're not having emotional safety?
Mhm.
What can be the reason why that individual still find themselves in that relationship?
Yeah, that is a big question with an answer that we don't have time to talk about.
All right.
Yeah, that's an answer that you won't find within the next 5 minutes. But that's a good question. It's a really good question. There's lots of reasons why people in abusive relationships find themselves either feeling trapped or feeling like they can't get out of it, or things like that. There's lots of reasons why that happens. And we may or may not talk about all of that in this class, but that's still a good question. Still a good question, but it's a really, it's kind of like a lot of things in our field. It has a lot of very nuanced answers. Okay. And I love good questions, and that's a really good one. If I ever don't know the answer, or if I think, oh man, we can't talk about this in 10 minutes, I'll probably just tell you, hey, we probably can't answer that right now. But more than likely, we'll probably discuss things that come up. Because one thing that happens in this course, I find, is as we read and go through, you start to have more questions about certain things, which is good. That's a good thing. So I really encourage that. Encourage you to ask. I think that's helpful. All right. Okay. Here's what I need before we stop tonight. And this is where I was talking about at the very beginning. I'm not asking for everyone to share. If you feel like sharing, I would love to have your feedback and input. But what I do at the beginning of every class I teach, I like to know a little bit about why, kind of like two things, what are you expecting from this class? And the second thing is like, how would you know if your expectations were met? Like, how would you know that this class is meeting those expectations? That's important to me. The first one should be a little easy to answer. The second one you might have to think about. But I would love for anyone that feels comfortable answering, I'd love to know, like, what are your expectations? And I'm going to turn my light on real quick.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
You just showed us your book, but my book looked different. Do I have a right book?
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I'm laying down. I'm sick, so it's just hard for me to sit down.
No, you're fine. You're fine. What are y'all's
I can go ahead
expectations?
and start, I guess. So I work with kids. I'm a special education teacher, and so I'm interested in, what's going on in their lives. But I've already been through this program for a while, and so after this class, I only have 3 more classes to go. So that's exciting. So I've already gone through a lot of classes that kind of explain some things. But the big thing that's coming up with me is that my parents are getting older, and I've noticed some changes, some different personality differences, some crankiness, and so I am interested to learn more about what is going on with them. And so so I, of course, I'm here to learn like everything I'm supposed to learn. But I think the thing that's going to probably pique interest most is what I don't know about as much, which is going to be about the elderly people and depression and changes and things like that.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I've had more older adult clients in the last 4 years than I ever have before. I'm not talking about older as in 40s, by the way. I'm talking about 60s, 70s. And them and their children and their adult children, actually. So that's an area that's actually it's a niche area, but it's starting to become more of a thing, I think. So that's a good. It sounds like a personal kind of, I want some personal information for myself and my family, but just having that general knowledge will be helpful. That's good. Anybody else?
Something I'm interested in, and I think like Erickson's philosophy appeals to me the most because he kind of has the premise of if you miss a developmental stage, you can still meet it at some point in your life. But as far as like lifespan theory and perspective, what it would look like to engage with clients when we're in a therapy session and identifying missed stages and how to refacilitate those for them. Like if they missed something when they were a kid or a teenager in their adulthood, or even working with an older population as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah, and there's also other like environmental factors and things that happen inside their life that affect those missed stages. Yeah, that's good. Erickson's super popular, especially in education. Piaget and Erickson are, that those guys in terms of behavioral theories have been around for a long time. So, and we'll talk about those too. Anybody else?
I have a input.
Yeah.
I've been working with, I've been doing like drug and alcohol counseling for a while. And I've noticed that with drug use, at least with my clients that I've seen, it seems like specific stages that there's a pattern that something goes wrong, you know what I mean? For lack of a better word, where it's like, it's either a teenage thing, or it's like the drug issues that I've been seeing is they happen at like times that I can almost predict like it's one of 3 or 4 areas. And so I just think it's interesting to look at the lifespan theory to see where there's like failure to thrive in certain areas, or where people won't get past a certain point, or they're trying to treat, like the last person before me was saying, where their needs weren't met in the past. So I just kind of on that level kind of want to see, what deeper might be going on there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that particular area is so broad, not broad, so nuanced. Like, for example, if there's an addiction, for the most part, you do stop development at whatever stage you entered that addiction.
Right.
Typically,
right.
it will be picked back up after the addiction has been addressed and you're into recovery.
Yeah, and more broadly, even I've worked for like federal probation people that have been like like federal clients and stuff like that, and they have the same thing if they've been incarcerated. It seems like
Yep.
they have to go
Yep.
back to their stage that they were in, and that's really applicable, like for
Mhm.
clients that have had those kind of situations.
Yeah, and they have other issues that they're dealing with when they come. I worked in that area for 3 years too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I worked with the Bureau of Prisons in Lubbock. We did mandatory therapy for men and women coming out of federal prison.
Nice.
Yeah. Anybody else?
So I've worked in child welfare for a few years. And initially my goal was just thinking about, protecting children, child safety, and trying to help them before things kind of get out of control, before they hit adolescence, before they hit adulthood. But just that field has opened up my interest to just everybody's dynamic when trauma hits, like how that affects every single person, every single life stage. And then how do they get out of that? How do they find healing in each of those life stages? So that's kind of something that's very interesting. Well, this class is really interesting to me in the trauma aspect of things.
Yeah. And we have a specific trauma course now that I think is really good. That does a really good job of talking about trauma and its effects too. But yes, trauma, I mean, honestly, if you're going to go into mental health, then you need to learn as much as you can about trauma. I mean, we're in one big trauma right now, right? Y'all know that.
Sure.
Gargantuan trauma, like a massive trauma right now. Yeah, it's happening every day. So the effects will be, the effects of this will be for years to come. Doesn't mean we won't persevere or be resilient. It's just we're in the middle of it. So, all right, good. Anybody else?
I'm interested in the class to learn why people find it difficult to change as they get older. Why is change difficult as the lifespan move into the later years of life?
Mm-hmm. That would be yeah, that topic would be very interesting just in and of itself. So how change happens or doesn't happen. It's kind of a big, that area, like change in the process of change, is actually a big, well-researched phenomenon. But if you throw in the fact that as people get older, well, there's other questions. Can they change? Is it possible to change? Do they want to change? That kind of thing. Maybe we could talk about it in that way. But yeah, that's good. That's good.
Can I ask a question that piggybacks off of that?
Sure.
So do you think that the book, this is important to me, at least, with when it comes to, changes in life stages and things, I feel like the cultural places that the people are coming from, different countries, different cultures and societies, stuff like that. Do you feel like the book references that? I just feel like that's really important, especially,
Yeah,
now.
I mean, it's going to reference it through all throughout. You have to. We don't teach any classes now without talking about that, just FYI. We can't talk about the human beings without talking about those cultural differences. And keep in mind, when we talk about culture, we're saying some specific things about ethnicity, gender, age, socioeconomic status, could be pieces of like family of origin, like where they grew up. We could be talking about environment. We're talking about, it's kind of a broad term, but it has some very specific aspects of it. And we will talk about culture specifically pretty much every class. So yeah, that's a good question. But the book does a really good job of talking about how culture, how culture plays a role. I mean, there's actually a full human developmental theory based on that you guys will read about too.
Cool.
Good question. Anybody else?
I'm kind of interested in, I know we've referenced it like family of origin trauma, but just like identity and how someone establishes what they believe about themselves, their own identity. I know a lot of it's messages they got when they were a child, but just kind of how that changes over time and, how firm that is when they're a child, and does it stick with them through adolescence and adult life, and just kind of that self identity, those messages that we all say to ourselves, like kind of how someone gets those beliefs, those core beliefs, and kind of how those change over time. That's interesting.
Yeah, sure. So there's a couple of things here that I'm hearing: the identity piece, but also a little bit of self-worth, but also you're talking about self-talk a little bit too, like how we talk to ourselves. Because we all start talking to ourselves early in childhood. like in our, it doesn't mean we have multiple personalities. I mean, we all talk to ourselves. We all have self-talk. It starts early in childhood and then lasts throughout our entire life. And so that self-talk can be negative. And we could get that from messaging from childhood or from environment. I mean, there's lots of places that comes from, but that self-talk can also be changed and we can develop it differently for sure. But the identity piece is somewhat connected to that, but there is a actual way that that happens and develops. And we're actually going to talk about that specifically as we talk about childhood into adolescence and what that looks like, because it starts in childhood and goes through adolescence, but really is not fully formed until later in adolescence for the most part. And that's not 100% for everyone, but in general, that's kind of how it works. So when we're talking now, I want to make sure that I'm understanding too. I'm talking about this from the standpoint of cognitive, behavioral, emotional development, not necessarily like gender identity specific, that can be a specific topic in and of itself as well. I'm talking about it a little bit more broadly. Does that make sense, Jared, what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I've like briefly studied like other theories like Freud and Piaget, and I always feel like I kind of get so bogged down in the details and I'm just like reading. And so I think this class hopefully will be really helpful and with you kind of like pointing out what does that look like in real life or maybe a therapeutic setting, or I don't know if that would be just examples that you've had over the years, or just that additional knowledge instead of like reading the book and I'm like, okay, I'm seeing this info, but maybe something will click like, okay, that's what that looks like in real life. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. So when we talk about Freud, Jung, Erickson and Piaget too, they kind of come from that strain. We still keep some of their thoughts from their theories, mainly like subconscious thought comes from there, right? So when we talk about making something subconscious conscious, that started with Freud, and then he kind of taught that, and that was something that's psychologically speaking been passed down for a long time. That's one path. There's other theories, like if we talk about I see his face. No, I just totally blinked on his name. I knew I was going to do that as soon as I start talking.
Erik Erikson?
No, not Erickson. It's going to bug me. I'm going to find it. Hang on a second.
Bandura.
No, Bandura's way Skinner, Bandura. Those guys are all behavioral folks.
Brenner?
No. Vygotsky, when we talk about him, he's going to start talking a little bit more about culture and how it impacts us. But we could get real specific about like if you're talking about Skinner, where you're talking about like, operant conditioning, right? Like Pavlov's dog kind of stuff. That's still applicable as well. That's behavior, like behaviorist kind of thinking. But then we could look at it from like social learning. In other words, we pick things up more from not just like conditioning or from like how we develop cognitively, but how we develop socially, and our social surroundings have a big impact on how we learn, what we learn. And so, I mean, there's lots of, again, the theories themselves are just trying to put some structure around why we do things we do, why we think things we think. In my experience with the theories, when you start reading them, more than likely, one or two or three of them potentially are going to like jump out at you and you're going to resonate with immediately. You're going to be like, oh, that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
That probably is going to happen.
Yeah.
More than likely. We won't talk specifically about every single theory, but I will talk broadly about how they influence, how they can be influential over us. I'm a marriage and family therapist, so I'm also a systems theory person too, which
Yeah.
systems theory is a little bit different than some of these other ones as well. And we'll talk about that too. Anybody else? Okay, here's what we're going to do. If you have questions or anything, you can always obviously email me. I'm going to put my So I'm giving you my business email address in the chat, as well as my business phone number. So you'll have it. To be quite honest with you, if it's like you really need to get hold of me quick, texting me is always quicker than anything else. I get tons of Moodle email all the time, especially during the semester, and it kind of gets buried from time to time. So it takes me a little longer to get to it versus this email and texting. If you do text me, just tell me who you are and what class you're in, just so I'll know, because I don't keep everybody's names and everything on my phone. And if you don't tell me and I'll send a text back, hey, who is this? Please don't take offense. I'm just wanting to know who, what class we're talking about. Does anybody else have me for counseling assessment by any chance this semester? Okay, that gets real confusing too when I have same students in both classes. Okay. All right. Any other questions about anything? Okay. Then that's it. I hope you guys have a good rest of the week. And I think our next time is October, whatever 2 weeks. I think it's 2 weeks from tonight, right? Or 3 weeks. Is it 4 weeks? October 5th?
4th.
Yeah, October 5th.
4th.
4th.
October 4th. It's a Monday, right? I think, hopefully.
I don't know.
Yes, it's Monday.
Okay, cool. October 4th. I'll see you then. Have a good night.
All right, thank you. I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thank you.
Y'all have a
Thank
good one.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.